At the start of the movie, we see a man called George Almore, an AI scientist living alone at a remote facility in Japan. As he returns from morning exercises, an android, J2, reports some problems in the facility, which is soon solved by the two as they have been accustomed to this old facility. Elsewhere, there is another android, J1. She doesn't have arms and seems not able to speak clearly, but George understands her and shows cartoons to her. Meanwhile, J2 tells George she had a dream last night where they were driving together, but after which she woke up sad. George comments sometimes dreams do that. Following that, George tells J2 to get J1 ready for evaluation and leaves, despite J1 wanting to talk. In the living room, we can see he's talking with his wife, Jules, who died in a car accident years ago and had her consciousness stored in a device provided by the archive company. But soon, Jules is too sad to continue and ends the call. He soon gets interrupted by a call from his superior, Simone, urging him to fix the facility's security systems. She ridicules his robot for not being able to speak, as George has been working on it for 2.5 years. After the call is terminated, J2 tells George she doesn't like Simone. It turns out that he doesn't want Simone to know too much about J1 and J2. Following that, he enters a workshop, and we learn he has been building another android, J3, which J2 has noticed. As they are working together outside, J2 says she knows George is building a better robot to replace her, which George tries to deny. Back in his workshop, George tries to wake up J3 for the first time, but as she opens her eyes, she starts to scream loudly with memories flashing in her brain, alerting the system and causing George to put her into hibernation. The next day, 2 vehicles approach the facility, and the man introduces himself as Vincent Sinclair from the archive company, claiming to inspect his archive device. George tells the 2 robots to play dead until the visitors are gone, saying this is very important. Vincent explains the armed machines are just standard company procedure and that they need to check if his archive device conditions are optimal for his remaining usage. George tells the 2 that his wife Jules can call in, but he can't call out. As the assistant Melvin starts to run tests on the device, he discovers one of the security seals is broken and decides to prepare for burial, which infuriates George. Melvin adds that they will use force if necessary. George retaliates that they are standing on corporate sovereign territory. Vincent intervenes, saying it's a misunderstanding as he didn't give Melvin enough relevant information, after which George tells them to leave. George wakes up J3 again, and J3's emotion seems still unstable. As George wants to put her back into hibernation again, J3 stops him and tells him never to do it again. She says she doesn't like being like this, and George promises that her subconsciousness is building itself and she will feel better soon. The next day, George gives J3 a test, and she seems to have the sense of taste like a real human. Following that, she is asked to watch the VR thing to test her empathy. J2 then comes in commenting she likes the test. J3 then learns that there are 3 of them. Later, J1 comes in, and George introduces them to one another. George begins to explain that J1 and J2 have stopped developing their intelligence. So J1 has the brain faculty of a 5-year-old, and J2 has the intelligence of a 15-year-old. As for J3, she has fully developed intelligence like an adult human. As George is talking about this, J2 is watching them through a security camera. The next day, George hands J3 a handheld transceiver for an emergency before he heads out to fix the security system. J2 says she wants to come with him, but is turned down by George, saying he just needs her to take care of the sisters. As he's working outside, J3 calls him that power supplies problems are occurring. As a result, he comes back to solve the problem. J2 comes up and wants to help him, but ends up annoying George. George then meets the man, Tag, in a restaurant. Tag hands him a picture of him sleeping, saying it's 2 nights ago, telling him he has been spied on by someone. So for his safety, he gives him new security procedures, stating it's only for an emergency. In a flashback, George was sharing the news that he was given the mothballed facility to develop a deliverable prototype in 3 years. As they are talking, a car is flying at them, waking him from the dream. The house system informs there is a breach in the residential area, and George discovers his window is broken. As he checks his workshop, he finds J3 absent. He goes to the garage and opens the security case, asking if Tag is behind this. The doors next to him close, not complying with his request. Realizing Tag is not up to this, he drives out to the forest and looks for the missing J3. George sends out his drones to search the forest but finds nothing. As he returns, he finds J1 is waiting in the rain. He brings her back into the garage and dries her. When he is preparing to go for another search, J3 falls out from one of the shelves on him. When she is wakened, she is angry that George didn't tell her the truth. George calms her down, saying he was trying to do so, but he just couldn't do it. After putting her back on the power supply, he explains that he managed to extract his wife's data from the archive box and connect it to her brain, which has never been done by anyone. J3 asks if he will continue to develop J4, which is denied by George. George also learns that J2 tries to show J3 the archive and fights with her, which caused the glass to break. George goes to J2, questioning her about this. It turns out J2 is jealous about J3, literally a better version of her. George says she went too far this time and turned off J2's power. After that, J2's legs are taken off, and George is adapting them for better mobility. But it seems they are not going back to J2's body as George is making the final step of building J3. At the same time, George finds a pair of toy-like legs for J2. After being woken up again, J2 notices her original legs are gone and says she knows George gave them to J3. J2 again goes to the waterfall alone despite its low battery power. When she returns to the facility, she falls to the ground. In the living room, as George is having breakfast, J3 says she misses cheese and bacon so much. George then offers her the food, saying her body doesn't need it, but she is able to taste the flavor. J1 sees J2's condition and soon informs George. After putting the power on, J2 is still upset, but George still doesn't give her much attention. J3 and George start to spend more time together on daily activities, while J2 comes to the realization that she will never be better than J3. As the two are enjoying their dance, J2 puts her things on George's desk and bids farewell to J1 before she terminates herself by walking into a lake. Moments later, George is aware of J2's absence and starts to search the forest, but to no avail. George knows what J2 has done to herself and buries her stuff alongside the others. At night, J3 gets into George's bed and starts touching him gently. George puts his arm on her, but as he opens his eye and sees J3, he jumps off the bed quickly and makes her get out. J3 runs out of the room, can't control herself but to scream. She passes out. Waking up from the coma, J3 says she remembered the crash and that Jules was pregnant, which George never knew. George then tries to contact his wife on the archive box, but gets no response as usual. Therefore, he calls the archive company for help. The customer service informs him that it's already the very late stage, and they can't do much about it, so he had better prepare for his final call with his wife. George mentions their team just came to check not long ago, but the man replies that they don't have the record of the visit. Moments later, Simone calls in angrily stating that the archive company has found the prototype in the lake and a team is on the way to shut down his research. J3 terminates the call by breaking the screen, realizing the archive company is coming for them. George decides to cut the power to the bridge. As he is busy outside, J3 hears the phone of the archive box ringing and picks it up. J3 tells Jules she doesn't have to be worried about George because she will take care of him when the archive expires. Just then, George rushes back seeing J3 is on the phone. He picks up the phone asking Jules to trust him and saying they will see each other very soon. After he hangs up, J3 questions why he will see her soon. But as she sees the moving operating table, she finally understands George's plan. He's going to put Jules in her body, and she is just a tool to bring back his dead wife. George confesses that he had to be sure she has the same emotions and feelings as Jules. Then, the house system warns helicopters are approaching. The armed force has breached a security door. George opens the emergency case, and the doors start closing. But one of the doors won't close due to the hacked system. As George finishes closing the door manually, J3 is holding the gun from the security case at him. But knowing her fate, she puts down the gun and lays down on the table. As they begin downloading the data into her brain, the force is breaking the door as well. When the process finishes, J3 is still unconscious. When the door opens, the helicopter and soldiers all disappear as if they have never been here. Then, Jules wakes up in J3's body and the couple is overjoyed to see each other. However, the archive phone rings again, greatly confusing George. George picks up the phone and Jules is on the other side. Jules sadly tells him this is the last call and she can't explain everything. She says she loves him and there is something he needs to hear. The scene then switches to another archive box where Jules and a baby just finished their call and left, indicating George is the one who died in the car accident. And the archive company is actually going to steal his work on the AI technology, since he has succeeded in combining consciousness and the intelligent android. Thank you for watching.